Well, the illegal tobacco trade has been exploding recently, quite literally, really. You've got gangs firebombing rival stores. They're fighting for control of the booming black market. They also target shops that refuse to sell their illegal products. And these arson attacks have been particularly bad in Victoria, where it was reported by the Herald Sun this week that many stores are choosing now to cop a fine for selling the illegal tobacco rather than risk being firebombed by these gangs for refusing to sell the illegal products. Despite it being legal to smoke, the excise on a packet of 25 is now $32, which is a 210% increase over the last decade. I mean, an average packet of cigarettes is on the way to costing $50. It is extortionate. Now you've got South Australia. They're going to spend $16 million, we find out today, to crack down on illegal tobacco and vapes. Joining me to discuss is criminologist at Deakin University, Dr. James Martin. It would seem pretty clear, James, that as the excise has gone up and it's really reached a saturation point now, and if you look at the budget forward estimates, the budget that came out just a few weeks ago, it shows for the first time basically ever that there is a prediction that the tax take on tobacco excise will actually decrease over the next few years at the same time as the excise keeps going up. Now, for the last 10 years, the excise has been going up and up and up, and smoking rates have gone down or remained reasonably stagnant. The tax has gone through the roof while they've had fewer smokers, which of course means they're making more money out of fewer people. Now they're going to make less money out of those people. I suspect it's not because you've got fewer people smoking, it's because they found a different product, and that's either illegal tobacco or vapes. And that has caused this massive outbreak of gang crime.
Yeah, that's right, Caleb. It's been a pretty remarkable transformation that we've seen over the last few years in particular, but it's really been brewing for some time. The price of cigarettes, as you mentioned, has increased dramatically, more than doubling over the past 10 years, and that's almost exclusively due to increases in taxation. And there's a really predictable outcome that comes from this, and that is as the price of legal smokes gets further and further out of the reach of ordinary people, many of whom are disproportionately concentrated in lower socioeconomic groups, that people start to look for alternatives from the black market. And that's what we're seeing now with this huge explosion in black market violence. We've had more than 80 fire bombings, not even over the past 18 months, mostly concentrated in Victoria, but there have been similar instances of violence around the country as well. So as the government looks to increase tobacco tax excises even further, this violence and the market share that belongs to these organised crime groups is likely to grow.
So who is this actually benefiting? I mean, so you've got the tobacco excise goes through the roof, which of course creates a big black market for illegal tobacco. And I think it's something around 20% of the entire tobacco market in Australia at the moment is basically illegal tobacco. Then of course you've got vapes, which the federal government have now decided instead of regulating, they have banned. So the only way you can get one is through your doctor. But, I mean, you can walk into pretty much any convenience store in the country and get your hands on a vape. These are opportunities where the government could have actually made some tax if they'd left the tax a little lower and regulated the market a little better. Instead, what they have created is a market for crime, which benefits no one. They've created a market for substandard products that aren't tested and don't have to be regulated in any way, which is good for no one. How can the government justify any of this as a public health measure?
Well, I think it's pretty simple politically for the government at the moment, and that is, politically, most people don't really care about smokers and they don't care about vapes, people who vape at the moment either. These are pretty stigmatized groups these days, even though despite, as you noted before, that cigarettes at least remain legal in the country. So, but in terms of the health sort of aspect, then there is a rationale for having, some tax levied on these products, products that come with health harms or other sort of social harms, to try and deter people away from using them, or at least using them at very high levels. But there is a sweet spot there, and it looks as though the government has now increased the taxes beyond the point of revenue generation and beyond the point that they're simply shifting consumer behaviour, because we're seeing the development of these black market sources. And as the black market grows further, that pricing signal that the government's trying to send just gets further and further diluted.
And of course, by doing so, creating that black market, they've essentially found a way to funnel money into organised crime, which, as we know, funds murder and sexual slavery and rape and all sorts of terrible things. How much of the business that organised crime and bikie gangs and whatever are doing now is being made up of illegal tobacco and vapes versus drugs? Because, of course, traditionally we think about drugs as being their stock in trade. Now you've got all this illegal tobacco coming onto the market. How big a market has that become for those gangs?
Well, they're absolutely huge, and these are drugs. So we draw a sort of arbitrary line as to what drugs are legal and what drugs are illegal, and I think the arbitrariness of that is becoming apparent now as we've got an increasing de facto prohibition on cigarettes as they're increasingly priced out of the reach of regular consumers, and now we've got this prescription-only model for vapes, which 93 or over 90% of people who vape don't have a prescription, so they're doing that illegally. In terms of the overall size, it's absolutely massive. We know just from vapes in particular that 90% of people who do that do so illegally. That's about 1.5 million consumers. So these are Australians that would otherwise be purchasing legal products if they could get their hands on them, but of course they can't. So with 1.5 million consumers, that's just with vapes alone, that makes it the second largest illegal drug market in the country after cannabis. So we're talking absolutely astronomical numbers.